Well, let me ask you, as a person, do you have a general belief?
As a person, I have a general belief that racism is abhorrent.
That racism is what?
Abhorrent.
Well, I think I think we would all agree with that.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, candidates. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. That was Dianne Feinstein and Judge Amy Coney Barrett saying abhorrent. Judge Coney Barrett is amazing. She's remarkable. She's riveting. Whether you're listening, whether you're watching, you're saying to yourself, I want that judge on the Supreme Court. And I believe Democrats are coming to that conclusion as well, that there's nothing they can do because she's absolutely sparkling. Brilliant. Here she is stating the key thing, the Ginsburg rule, named for the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, whom Judge Amy Coney Barrett will replace. Cut number 10.
Senator Feinstein, as I said to Senator Graham at the outset, if I were confirmed, you would be getting Justice Barrett, not Justice Scalia. So I don't think that anybody should assume that just because Justice Scalia decided a decision a certain way, that I would too. But I'm not going to express a view on whether I agree or disagree with Justice Scalia for the same reasons that I've been giving. You know, Justice Ginsburg, with her characteristic pithiness, used this to describe how a nominee should comport herself at a hearing. No hints, no previews, no forecasts. That had been the practice of nominees before her, but everybody calls it the Ginsburg rule because she stated it so concisely, and it's been the practice of every nominee since. So I can't, and I'm sorry to not be able to embrace or disavow Justice Scalia's position, but I really can't do that on any point of law.
She was so remarkable that Democrats kind of gave up, and they actually had some substantive exchanges. I want to salute Dick Durbin, who in 2017 asked her if she was an Orthodox Catholic. There was none of that yesterday. The anti-Catholicism is all washed off of the Democrats. They realize it's toxic. So Dick Durbin, the senator from Illinois, had a good exchange with her. I mean, really probably a model exchange for a Democrat of one party and a nominee sent forward by a president of another. Respectful and serious. Here's cut number 14, where Senator Durbin asks her about George Floyd.
Thank you for that question, Senator Durbin, because it gives me an opportunity to make my position clear.
One second. This is actually the first exchange is on the Obamacare question and whether or not she has taken a position on it. Cut number 14.
Thank you for that question, Senator Durbin, because it gives me an opportunity to make my position clear. When I wrote, and this was as a law professor, about those decisions, I did critique the statutory interpretation of the majority opinions. And as I mentioned before, my description of them was consistent with the way that Chief Justice Roberts described the statutory question. But I think that your concern is that because I critiqued the statutory reasoning, that I'm hostile to the ACA, and that because I'm hostile to the ACA, that I would decide a case a particular way. And I assure you that I am not. I'm not hostile to the ACA. I'm not hostile to any statute that you pass. And the cases on which I commented, and we can talk at another time, I guess, about the context, the distinctions between academic writing and judicial decision-making, but those were on entirely different issues. So to assume that because I critiqued the interpretation of the mandate or the phrase established by a state means that on the entirely different legal question of severability, I would reach a particular result just assumes that I'm hostile, and that's not the case. I apply the law, I follow the law, you make the policy.
If you had severability on your bingo card, you won yesterday, along with hints, previews, forecasts. Judge Barrett then did have an exchange about George Floyd with Dick Durbin. Cut 15.
Have you seen the George Floyd video?
I have.
What impact did it have on you?
Senator, as you might imagine, given that I have 2 black children, that was very, very personal for my family. Jesse was with the boys on a camping trip out in South Dakota, so I was there, and my 17-year-old daughter, Vivian, who's adopted from Haiti, all of this was erupting. It was very difficult for her. We wept together in my room, and then it was also difficult for my daughter, Juliet, who's 10. I had to try to explain some of this to them. I mean, my children, to this point in their lives, have had the benefit of growing up in a cocoon where they have not yet experienced hatred or violence. And for Vivian, you know, to understand that there would be a risk to her brother or the son she might have one day of that kind of brutality has been an ongoing conversation. It's a difficult one for us, like it is for Americans all over the country.
And so I'd like to ask you, as an originalist who obviously has a passion for history, I can't imagine that you could separate the two, to reflect on the history of this country. Where are we today when it comes to the issue of race? Some argue it's fine. Everything's fine, and you don't have to even teach children about the history of slavery or discrimination. Others say there's implicit bias in so many aspects of American life that we have to be very candid about and address. Others go further and say, no, it's systemic racism that's built into America, and we have to be much more pointed in our addressing it. How do you feel?
So I think it is an entirely uncontroversial and obvious statement, given, as we just talked about, the George Floyd video, that racism persists in our country. As to putting my finger on the nature of the problem, you know, whether, as you say, it's just outright or systemic racism, or how to tackle the issue of making it better, those things, you know, are policy questions. They're hotly contested policy questions that have been in the news and discussed all summer. So while, you know, as I did share my personal experience, I'm very, you know, happy to discuss the reaction our family had to the George Floyd video. Giving broader statements or making, you know, broader diagnoses about the problem of racism is kind of beyond what I'm capable of doing as a judge.
That is exactly right. 100% right. The most difficult and telling moment in the hearings is that exchange. And she killed it, nailed it, absolutely hit it out of the park. Cut number 16, her views on free speech.
Well, how about the free speech protections of the First Amendment? Why are those important?
So that minority viewpoints can't be squashed, so that it's not just the majority that can speak popular views. You don't really need the First Amendment if what you're saying is something that everybody wants to hear. You need it when people are trying to silence you.
Amen again. Then Judge Barrett, with Senator Josh Hawley, returned to the subject of race and spoke again about it. Cut number 17.
Let's just talk about that for just a second, if we could, when it comes to the fraught but vital issue of race and your own experience with that. You and your husband are the parents of a multiracial family.
We are.
Can you give us some sense, just in your personal experience, what that has been like for you, what that means to you, what experience you bring to the bench because of your experience as a parent in this unique context?
Well, I think I could say how it has shaped me as a person. It has certainly, whenever you have a life experience, it makes you acutely aware in your interactions with other people. It gives you empathy for them. I mean, the same is true of our having a son with a disability. But I want to make very clear, Senator Hawley, that while my life experiences, I think, I hope have given me wisdom and compassion, they don't dictate how I decide cases. Because, as we discussed before and have discussed a couple of times, sometimes you have to decide cases in ways where you don't like the result. So while I hope that my family has made me a better person, and my children definitely have given me new perspectives on life, I still, in applying the law and deciding cases, don't let those experiences dictate the outcome.
You'll follow the law wherever the law leads.
Yes.
And then the meme of the day came from cut number 5, John Cornyn asking Amy Coney Barrett this. Cut number 5.
Most of us have multiple notebooks and notes and books and things like that in front of us. Can you hold up what you've been referring to in answering our questions? Is there anything on it?
That letterhead that says United States Senate.
That's impressive. Well, Judge,
There was nothing on the notepad. Everything she did yesterday, she did without notes, without hesitation, without faltering, with great conviction, with obvious and deep sincerity. She's a marvelous nominee. She sparkles. I thought Justice Gorsuch might be the best nominee I'd ever seen, and before that, Chief Justice Roberts. Well, Amy Coney Barrett is the best nominee I've ever seen. She should get a 100-0 vote. I'll be right back, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance.